Yeah, so I titled today's video blog, Where is God in the Midst of This? And to be honest with you, the answer is really pretty easy. But that doesn't make the answer easy to understand or easy to accept. God hasn't gone anywhere. He's still on his throne, governing in the affairs of mankind. And that doesn't mean that, though, that we always like the way that God governs. Sometimes, actually, we can become quite agitated with the way that God is governing things, thinking maybe he should be intervening a little bit more, or at times thinking maybe God should just stay out of this a little bit more. But God really, in his perfection, he knows when it's best to step in and adjust directions, and when it's time to allow natural consequences of mankind's choices to really just propagate a little bit. Yet within that, there's this bona fide truth that reminds us that we can maybe up the odds of God choosing to step in to the affairs of mankind and straighten out some of the really crooked directions that people are taking. And when I watch what's happening in places like Minneapolis or Seattle or Chicago or even Buffalo and lots of other places, I wonder, what will it take for God to step in on behalf of those who are suffering and punish those who are intentionally causing some of these problems? Or I wonder, has God already simply said, you know what? It's time for you to suffer the consequences of the way that America has steadily and increasingly rejected him and what he says is right for the past 50 plus years. And if God is slowly removing his hand of protection and blessing, and what we're seeing happening is a result of that removal, is there something we can do that might help secure God's blessing and his protection once again? Well, I believe that in order to answer that, it could be a really, really long video. No doubt a revival of the principles of truth and right and a mass turning back to Jesus Christ is absolutely essential in procuring God's broad blessing and protection once again. Starting really with the church, but also saturating into our governing officials and the populace abroad. But it really needs to start with the church. If the church is receiving God's full blessing in a country, the country itself is going to feel that, and they are going to take notice. So what can we, as the body of Christ, that's the church, do in order to help ensure that God's attributes of peace and love reign on us? Listen to this verse. 1 Corinthians 13:11 says this. It says, finally, brothers, actually 2 Corinthians 13:11. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Strive for full restoration. Encourage one another. Be of one mind. Live in peace. And the God of love and peace will be with you. There's really four things here that are listed that have to do with our behaviors and relationships with each other. He says, strive for full restoration. In other words, work diligently to forgive and restore any broken bonds or any harsh feelings you might have towards other believers, even those that you don't agree with. Maybe in important matters or less important matters or politically or any other category that could be really important to you. If you don't do that, you're actually part of the problem, not the solution. Also, he says, encourage them. You can't encourage someone until you forgive them and you let whatever is going on that has caused a divide you let it go. Also, be of one mind, he says. In other words, be focused on the same important goal. The same important goal that you should be focused on. Jesus Christ and his gospel, that is. And finally, live in peace. In other words, don't let the differences divide, but rather actually figure out how to enjoy each other. Then you will experience the God of love and the God of peace raining down on you. And no doubt, also raining down on your fellow countrymen because of you. Maybe the only reason that this country is still intact, at least the way that our founding fathers drew it up, is because some of the parts of the body of Christ are already behaving that way. I hope that's you and I. And once we can get the whole church to follow God's directive, I believe the United States can and will once again thrive under God's leadership. Just kind of dwell on that a little bit today, and we'll see you in a couple days.